All right, we will call the meeting to order. We'll begin with a moment of silent prayer. Could you please, in your prayers, remember Tom Sackett, who passed away late May. Remember his family in your prayers, and a prayer of thanks that Tim Mahalik has bypassed death's door and is still with us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call. We have quorum. Supervisor Galitz and Smichek are excused. This is a meeting of the Washington County Board of Supervisors. Prior to this meeting, public notice was given by posting a copy of the agenda in the office of the county clerk and emailing the agenda to the West Bend Daily News, which is the official newspaper. In addition, the agenda was emailed to CNI Newspaper, Express News, Kewaskum Statesman, Milwaukee Journal, WIBD, WMBZ Radio, and WTKM Radio. The above action is in conformity with the state of Wisconsin's open meeting law. We will begin by considering the consent agenda. We have a motion to approve. Tim and Robert. Mr. Basil.
A constituent asked me yesterday, and I thought this would be a perfect time. He wanted to know the status of the Miller Park tax. I was wondering if Supervisor McCune would have an idea or give us idea when the sunset date would come for Miller Park tax?
Okay, Mark.
Yeah, we actually had a meeting yesterday, and it's been consistent with this last year's projections that they're looking at the last quarter of 2019 or the first quarter of 2020. The amount of money collected will be enough to retire the debt that's out there and put it in escrow for making the payments, as well as having a contingency fund to continue. The lease goes to 2040. So with the Milwaukee Brewers, that lease is out there. So even though we're going to turn off the tax, there had to be enough money collected to meet the obligations of the lease, which involves repairs that are ongoing, whether it's the escalator, the elevators, the roof repairs, the major repairs that the Brewers don't take care of, even like the seating and things like that. So there will be enough money then collected to cover the lease through 2040. It was brought up, what happens if they would extend the lease at that point in time. So, that's kind of probably the only other discussion that needs to be out there, or if there were some circumstances that weren't required that right now that we've covered that come up in the future with the change of the game. But right now it's tracking for 2019, 2020. How that works is it would be sent into the state Department of Regulation, DOR, I believe, collects the tax. They would turn it off. They would then tell all the retailers to stop collecting for it, both online and with everybody within the county. And then it just stops. That's how it's set up. But right now it's tracking consistently that way.
Okay. Good to hear that they're actually going to sunset a tax.
Yep.
Doesn't happen very often. Okay, we have a motion and a second for the consent agenda. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on to personal appearances, letters, and other communications. Beginning with A, Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission Executive Director Michael Hand with an annual update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you tonight and update you on what Sewer PAC has been doing for Washington County over the past year or so. Also with me here tonight is Deputy Director Kevin Muse, and I'll hand off the presentation at some point, and he'll finish that up then. As you're aware, we're the official area-wide public planning agency for the 7 counties in the southeastern Wisconsin region, and we consider and address physical development and infrastructure problems that extend beyond municipal and county boundaries. And our area-wide regional plans are advisory. They're long-range plans that deal with land use, transportation, water quality management, flood management, parks and open space, environmental corridors, natural areas, water supply. And we also have a very important function to meet federal area-wide planning requirements for transportation planning. This is the avenue by which funds keep flowing to the region for transportation projects, highway projects, and transit projects. And we're also the state-designated area-wide water quality planning agency, so one of our region-wide long-range plans is an area-wide water quality management plan. Our commission consists of 21 members, 3 from each of the 7 counties. One's appointed by the county board, and that's by custom a county supervisor. Jeffrey Schleif is Washington County's representative from the county board. 2 are appointed by governor, the governor, 1 from a county board supplied list, and it can be a local elected officials or private sector representatives. And our planning work is largely guided by advisory committees. They directly involve public officials, agency representatives, and private citizens, and they review the plans in detail. They provide their input, and they approve portions of the plan as they're developed, and then finally approve the entire plan itself. As far as our main functions, threefold. One is to provide a framework of long-range area-wide plans for physical development of the region as mandated by state law. The most basic element of those is land use. Transportation, utility, and facility elements are also part of it, and there are also environmental protection elements, and it's all part of the overall regional plan. Secondly, we provide data collection, analysis, and dissemination services for the municipalities and counties of the region, and that provides data on a uniform area-wide basis, whether it be land use or other areas. We share those with the public and private sectors, so that's a real benefit to them to have that kind of data, and it contributes to better decisions throughout the region. And finally, we provide a center to coordinate day-to-day planning activities, integrating the regional and local plans. A good example of that is the regional land use plan is integrated into local comprehensive planning. We promote regional plan implementation, and it facilitates intergovernmental discussions and intergovernmental cooperation. Next, I'd just like to go through some of the Washington County vision, mission, and strategic priorities and those components that relate to our planning program. Beginning with economic growth and vitality, those ovals that are indicated with arrows are the areas where we're most in tune with those priorities in terms of attracting, retaining, and developing businesses that are sustainable and benefit the economy. Planning for a reliable, well-maintained, and accessible transportation network, and also offering access to unique amenities and natural resources. That's an important component of our planning as well. Secondly, as far as effective mobility and reliable infrastructure, there I think each of these components is part of what we do as an agency. Supporting a multimodal transportation network, improving accessible and well-maintained transportation infrastructure, providing a transportation network that is designed to enhance safety and ease congestion and ensure efficient mobility throughout the region and the county, provide an interconnected system of safe trails and paths. We do park and open space planning as part of our regional plan, and offer support to support convenient, reliable, safe, and economic public transit options as well. As far as a well-governed and administered county, I think the one area where we have some involvement is in seeking opportunities to collaborate and share services with public and private partners. If the commission, as a metropolitan planning agency for the 4-county transportation management area that includes Washington County, no longer serve the county and its municipalities would no longer fulfill federal requirements and therefore would no longer be eligible for federal highway and transit funds. In addition, the state wouldn't be able to use any federal highway or transit funds on projects within the county's borders. And you can see on this table here that since 2010, the average transportation funds obligated for highways from the Federal Highway Administration is about $10 million, and from the Federal Transit Administration about $1.4 million. So that's a significant benefit to the county and the transportation system of the county, and it's made possible because you participate in that metropolitan planning organization as part of the regional land use and transportation plan. I'm just going to close by talking about several examples of the kind of projects that have been implemented or implemented in the county through using those funds provided through the federal funding. Resurfacing projects on Highway 144, 145, State Trunk Highway 33, State Trunk Highway 28, and Interstate Highway 41 from the southern county line to the Highway 41-45 split. Reconstructing and modernizing the I-41 and State Trunk Highway 144 interchange, reconstructing 2 miles of County Trunk Highway N, and reconstructing 2 miles of State Trunk Highway 175, and additional federal funding for the Commuter Express and county and city shared ride taxi services. So those all are funded with the funds that come to the region from, and come to the county from participation in the Regional Planning Commission. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Muse, our Deputy Director, and he'll take you through the rest of this, talking initially about our Vision 2050 Regional Land Use and Transportation System Plan.
Mike, that big chunk in 2015, 25 million, was that Highway 144?
It's okay.
Was that the reconstruction of the interchange at 144 or what?
I'm not 100% certain. It was either that or it was the resurfacing of I-41 between the county line and the interchange itself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So I'll briefly talk about two recent regional planning efforts that we finished, and then I'll finish up with local efforts that we've assisted the county or the county's municipalities on recently. So the first effort I wanted to talk about is Vision 2050, which is the Regional Land Use and Transportation Plan that enables those federal transportation funds to flow to the region. It does more than that, though. It makes long-term recommendations to local units of government regarding land use and transportation in the region. Some significant recommendations for Washington County and for the state within Washington County's borders would be an additional lane in each direction on I-41 south of the Richfield interchange, redevelopment of underutilized areas in the city of Hartford and city of West Bend to bring those back into productive economic use. Things such as the expansion of the Eisenbahn Trail within the county, and many other recommendations around things like freight and local roads and county arterials as well. We also relatively recently completed our region-wide water supply plan, which took a look at the long-term needs of the region's water communities for water supply, and determined what was needed to provide a sustainable and cost-effective water supply for the region for the future. For Washington County, the end results and the conclusions of that water supply plan were that the vast majority of the county can continue to be supplied through municipal or private wells. However, there is a recommendation in the plan that over time Germantown, or the portions of Germantown and Richfield served by public water supply be switched to Lake Michigan water supply at an appropriate time. Projects specifically completed for Washington County. I'm just going to touch on a few different areas at a time. In 2018, we completed the countywide hazard mitigation plan. This plan was prepared at no additional cost to the county through the obtaining of a FEMA pre-disaster mitigation grant, and then the local match was matched by the state of Wisconsin as well as the commission. This took an all-hazards approach, analyzing all sorts of potential hazards to the county, ranging from weather-related events and natural disasters to cyber attacks and communicable disease outbreaks. The plan was completed consistent with State Division of Emergency Management and FEMA guidelines. And once the plan is approved by the Division of Emergency Management and FEMA, the county will be eligible for federal hazard mitigation planning, pre-disaster mitigation planning, and flood mitigation assistance grants. And I can tell you that Kenosha County has certainly used those flood mitigation grants to pay for quite a few important projects in the county. This plan was, like all of our efforts, prepared in coordination with local units of government. So the Washington County Emergency Management Office and the Washington County Planning and Parks Department were heavily involved in this effort and provided fantastic help and guidance to the commission staff who were completing this plan. Recent local transportation efforts, we provided the county with existing and future traffic volumes for all of the county highways, provided pavement rating services for the town of Polk. We also completed the State Highway 60 reliever study, which this board looked at in great detail a few years ago, and also completed a short-range 5-year Washington County Transit Development Plan. Ongoing efforts this year include assisting the County Highway Commissioner with a intersection safety study for the Washington County highways, continuing to assist the Washington County Transportation Coordination Committee, which looks at better coordinating services for seniors and people with transportation services for seniors and people with disabilities in the county. We will be completing the functional classification of roadways in the county, which determines which types of funds different roadways are eligible for in the county in coordination with the state and the county highway commissioner. And then also the county is initiating a bicycle pedestrian plan at this time, and we're assisting the county with that by providing data and advice as needed. And in the area of land use, we in 2015 completed the processing and distribution of color digital orthophotography and LiDAR data to the county, and also recently completed the existing land use inventory for the county as well. We're currently in the process of undergoing a 10-year update to the county multi-jurisdictional comprehensive plan, which occurs every 10 years. Doesn't take us 10 years to do that. Many of you have participated in some of the efforts involved in producing that plan. That's expected to be considered for adoption by the county board in early 2019. And looking out to 2020, we're working with Washington County to define the scope for the 2020 digital orthophotography flights. Under regional economic development planning, the commission houses the region's economic modeling specialist international software, which is a software that provides data regarding wages, industry clusters, and workforce availability and skills. And the county's Economic Development Washington County Agency filed 12 requests over the past year for that data that we fulfilled. We also completed in 2017 an inventory of existing and proposed business parks in the county. We are currently in the process of converting the horizontal and vertical datum conversion datums within the for the county. This is ongoing, expected to be completed in mid-2019. To date, we've covered a number of townships in the county. We're either complete within those townships or underway, with Addison, Wayne, and Barton remaining to be started. Under the area of water resources and the environment, we've completed, over the past year, a review of 4 public sewer service extension projects in the village of Germantown, which was 2 of those, Jackson, 1 of those, and Slinger, 1 of those, and reviewed 10 private sanitary sewer connections in communities in the county as well. And also completed a protection plan for Pike Lake recently, and are currently working on a protection plan for Silver Lake and the Mason Creek watershed in the far southwest of the county. We've also have a number of ongoing wetland delineations by request of units of government in the county, including requests from the town of Trenton, the town of Wayne, the village of Germantown, and the town of Hartford. And what's now on screen is the full membership of the Regional Planning Commission. As Mike already mentioned, Supervisor Schleif is the county board's appointee, and then we also have Dan Schmidt and David Stroik as representatives of Washington County. Thank you.
You mentioned earlier the Germantown Richfield possibly needing to be supplied by Lake Michigan. Can you tell me, are they on the Lake Michigan water table or the Mississippi?
They're on the Lake Michigan basin right now.
That'll help. Thank you.
Chris?
Okay, I'm looking at page 4 of the report you sent out ahead of time that's in the agenda packet.
Okay.
And the very last sentence mentioned that we approved the Vision 2050 plan on September 12th, 2017. You don't note in there the provisions that we had put in our approval there related to not wanting any part of cooperating with funding of Milwaukee public transit, rail projects, trolley, streetcar, any of that. Is Milwaukee completely clear that we are not interested in cooperating and funding that?
Yes, they are. And we can make sure to add that in next year's report to make sure that that's clear to you. But no, we haven't been misrepresenting any
Okay.
endorsements received.
I just wanted to make sure Milwaukee's clear on that. Thank you.
Brian?
Thank you. On that same agenda packet that was provided ahead of time to us on page 9, for land use environmental corridors, can you expand on how often those maps are updated?
This is for the primary environmental corridors?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah, for
those-
primary.
Mike, do you want to? I'm
Sure.
fairly confident those are only updated upon request, but we'll let Mike.
Well, the process for updating primary environmental corridors is somewhat ongoing as we do natural area assessments, wetland delineations, that type of thing. If floodplains change, they're incorporated into that because they're one of the components of the corridors. Generally, it would be accomplished during our 5-year existing land use updates, so that's 2015, and it'd be potentially done again in 2020.
Okay. I already know, I believe I know the answer, but our property owners aren't really made aware of when their properties are included in these corridors, are they?
They would be if they're in a primary environmental corridor. If their property was in a primary environmental corridor, there would generally be a deed restriction on activities in the corridor.
I'm not quite sure I follow you on that because I don't believe that's true, but
Well, it is the case if there's a development that would occur.
in undeveloped land situations,
It may not then.
the property owners might not be aware of it.
They might not be aware, but
And-
that information certainly is available with all the counties.
What effects does that have on those property owners even if they're not aware of what their
Well-
property's been assessed or labeled as?
Yeah, I would say it's very rare that it has a significant effect in terms of severely limiting development of the property. There are generally ways that development can be accommodated if there's some concern with the corridors. We do have some guidelines that allow us, certain activities can be accomplished within the corridors, and also on the fringes of corridors, we can allow a certain level of encroachment up to about 10% of the total upland area on the site.
Okay. Second question for you is page 11 of that same document on the regional groundwater simulation. Is that monitoring the well, the water table depth and well depths?
Yes.
Or what component does that tie into that?
It's a computer simulation model. We work with the U.S. Geological Survey and the Wisconsin Geological Natural History Survey. They actually developed the model in cooperation with us. And it can be used to look at what-if scenarios. It's not specific to individual parcels, let's say, but it has some aerial breakdown so that you can get information location-wise at certain points within the region, and it looks at the balance between infiltration into the groundwater, pumping from the groundwater, base flow into streams, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Mark?
In that same packet that had been released earlier, on page 10, there was mention of the stream management planning assistance with your work with the North Lake Management District. I was unaware of anything to do with our county, but Washington County's listed in there relative to the Mason Creek. This is new to me. I didn't realize we had anything to do with this whatsoever. And I am part of one of the lake districts with Druid Lake, and I know we've had 3 instances of 100-year floods, which seem illogical even in that statement, but we've had it in the last 15 years. One, I think, was a 200-year event, which is amazing. But I was wondering if that's the case, and if this has to do with any flooding, or what this study that's going to be released in summer of 2018 this year, what that was in regard to.
Yeah, the Mason Creek Watershed Protection Plan is more addressing natural resources and water quality within the stream, within North Lake and the lakes in Waukesha County.
So the quality of the water, not the quantity?
Yes.
Okay. But it makes it eligible for some federal program because of how the report was completed? According to this, it says now that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency.
Yes.
So that might be helpful in the future for our other lake districts to know that if we need to do something different to make it eligible, because to my knowledge, I don't remember any district within our county getting federal money for the lake districts. We've got stewardship grants and we've got state DNR grants and some matching grants, but I don't think we've ever been eligible for anything federal. So that's something.
Well, there's been an emphasis more recently by EPA on what's called the 9 key element plan. And,
Okay.
and generally, if it's it's a larger watershed plan addressing a stream and a lake environment. Those, as we complete them, they're 9 key element plans. I think often when a lake district is looking at developing a plan, they're not interested in doing quite the scope of a full 9 key plan, 9 key element plan, and it's more costly and a little bit more extensive plan, but it certainly can be done.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. And maybe when we get when the report's done, because we've had, again, the flooding, and it's been severe. I mean, millions of dollars of damage over the years. Might be helpful to maybe coincide with that. Thank you.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hahn, we touched on the environmental corridor thing, and that's always been a gray area. SURPAC is an advisory body. What does the local municipality have to take action then to make something an environmental corridor? I know in Germantown, we got a subdivision now that has an environmental corridor. So what happens? Is it Germantown has to make the decision with your input, or?
Well, the environmental corridor program we've been doing that for about 50 years, mapping those corridors, and it is included in the DNR Administrative Code, Chapter NR 121. For water quality planning, there are certain restrictions on sewer development within environmental corridors. So it has some basis in state law and administrative code.
So do you make the decision? Does SURPAC make the decision, or does the municipality?
No, SewerPAC does those delineations,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
And they're reviewed when the community might adopt them as part of their comprehensive plan or their zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Okay, see no questions. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to B, Park Sustainability Plan presentation. That'll be Jamie. Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick question as to why on this type of presentation, I just click on it and it just says flagged. Is there a reason we don't get something like this ahead of time, that we can actually look through it and kind of formulate some of the questions? Or am I just doing this wrong because I don't have the presentation that's going to be shown? Yeah.
We didn't send the presentation out ahead of time.
Oh, okay, I guess I'm asking why. Is there a reason that?
The best reason I can give you is there are a couple slides that we added at the very end to give status updates on the fee. So we were changing it up past the packet, but we certainly could make note to put something in your
I
packet
just
in the
appreciate
future.
if we could get, okay, that's all I got, thanks.
Good evening, thank you. I guess I was asked to just take a very few minutes to sort of make sure that the entire county board has sort of a crash course in the park's fiscal sustainability plan. So I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of history on that. So back in April of 2017, the Parks Department sort of set out, prior to that even, in engaging the public to develop a plan to achieve financial independence and fiscal sustainability for the parks. So the board adopted this plan in June. It sort of came out of this idea that as we looked at all of the various services that the county provides to the public, that parks really were not something that we wanted to take our tax dollars and allocate those towards. So the question really became about, well, what's going to happen to the parks then? We have all of these parks. We need to do something rather than sit back and sort of wait and see us continue to cut into these places. So we put together a plan to maintain and improve the park system. We joke a lot that it's actually a plan about, this is how we're looking at moving the parks forward into the future, trying to make them a sustainable place that we can rely on users to fund. So most of this presentation sort of focuses on the 2018 portion of the plan. The plan was developed with the idea that every year it would be rewritten, and in July, the Public Works Committee is actually going to set back and talk about 2019 and the future year and our plan for that next $141,000 and how we're going to come up with that and sort of those ideas. So tonight I'm going to talk about 2018. So the plan in 2018 really revolved a lot around the implementation of the park entrance fee, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about, as well as some additional operational efficiencies, shelter reservations, and other revenue. During the budgeting process, we actually backed down our estimate on the daily park fee to $75,000, just because we wanted to make sure we took our time, that we set a goal that would be achievable, and we could really kind of get a pulse for how many people would purchase annual stickers. So that was really at the high, this is pretty basic, but 2018 was implementing the park entrance fee, which we are now 6 months into, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Operating the parks collectively as a business and developing the enterprise fund. So we spent a lot of time changing sort of how we're talking about and how we're thinking about parks. We now, for the first time in 2018, track every hour spent to a park in our activities so that we can put costs in buckets with parks as well as revenues. So I can tell you that as of today, 40% of our annual stickers and daily fee revenue is coming out of Homestead Hollow County Park. So we can tell you, and we will be able to tell you, how many people come through each one of these parks, as well as which parks are a drain on our resources, which ones are supporting the types of amenities we want to have. There was a component to Master Plan Glacier Hills. This was part of a discussion about acquiring Wally and Bees. That was happening at the time. That was postponed during that discussion, so there has been no progress on that piece of the plan. And then the bike and pedestrian plan, which hopefully you've heard about, but we are currently in the midst of a brand new plan to develop a new interconnected network of bikes and trails, and that'll be really exciting in terms of driving a lot of where our resources go in terms of, you know, the projects that we pursue into 2019 and 2020. So this is a slide as of 6/10/2018. Year to date. So we're 6 months into the implementation of our new fee. Hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at this. Year to date, our revenues are tracking at $53,000. We've sold just about 1,800 annual park passes and 1,000 daily park passes. Most of those started Memorial Day forward. So prior to Memorial Day, we really didn't see a lot of daily entrance fees at all. People coming in January and February bought annual stickers. There was very few daily entrances during that time period. And then we're watching our launch activity. We did not actually raise fees on our boat launches, just changed how we're operating it slightly. And we're seeing more people purchase annual boat stickers. And then at the bottom is somewhat miscellaneous revenue for park users that we've established as part of our partnerships and initiatives with the Germantown summer camps, the Kickers, and the Washington County football clubs that are now paying 100% of the costs of maintaining the fields, plus, in the case of the Kickers, purchasing annual stickers for all of the families. So that was sort of new territory that we've worked through with those groups. A big component of the plan was if you're going to charge fees, you have to make sure you have places that people want to go to. So we really started to focus a lot about return on investment and revenue generating activities in the parks. This was the list in 2018, and I'm happy to put a check mark by most of this. The cabins will be finished up the end of this summer. The dog park is opening on Friday. That's going to be hopefully a great event. Hopefully you can make it out there. The disc golf course, we're shooting to be a top 5 18-hole course at Sandy Knoll in the state. They're attracting a variety of visitors there. And then we spent some time analyzing sort of what the next set of recommendations will be and piloting the beer gardens, which the first one is also on Friday. And then partnering and sponsorships, naming rights, and really just trying to look at it differently in terms of how we operate in the community, with the community, and really focusing on the public-private sector partnerships in terms of having the private sector use our parks to our benefit. So there's small examples of that, like having studios come in and host yoga classes. There's bigger examples like Riverside Disc Golf leasing out our course at Sandy Knoll. So I've highlighted a couple of the things. The Public Works Committee set a new policy for sponsorships and naming rights. So we have our first naming rights agreement with Homestead Howell Dog Park presented by J.W. Speaker. We're actively pursuing those types of arrangements. We have our beer gardens. We did do an initiative with Waukesha County this year. We called it Parks Without Borders, where we're exploring the idea of reciprocity between the counties and also drawing on the extensive amount of resources that they have. The sign in the bottom right, those are new wayfinding signs that will be put up in all of our parks, built with Waukesha's machine. So we bought materials and then they produced the signs for us. And there's a picture of a dog wearing a JW Speaker bandana, which they'll be giving out on Friday, with dog bowls to everybody at the Unleashing event. And then there was a third component of the plan, which was maintenance and operating reductions and efficiencies. And this is an area where we're really talking about trying to reduce the footprint of parks, but really also divesting ourselves of obligations that we don't want to be actively involved in. So as part of the public participation, we determined our non-priority parks. We've put together an action plan for those, and we'll be talking about what the next step is for the ones listed in the special use park category with the Public Works Committee in July. You'll see that, for those of you who don't know, so far we've sold the undeveloped Toma property and the undeveloped Aaron property is set to close in August. Combined, those two properties generated $525,000, which will land in the Park Enterprise Fund, which has been designated by you to fund strategic acquisitions and or other park or trail related projects that the county does see as a higher priority. So that's a topic that we'll be discussing in the future, as you have that money for these types of purposes to spend as you wish to allocate. So again, I just want to reiterate that the plan was really about how we sort of reinvent ourselves, re-energize ourselves to stay in the business of parks, shifting towards the users helping to foot the bill for some of the services and amenities within those parks rather than the property tax. And how we're focusing decision-making on return on investments. And I guess I would just like to end, I will certainly take questions, but by thanking everybody for their support, and specifically with regard to the fee implementation. That has went extremely well. We have not gotten a lot of complaints, and we are leading the state and possibly the country in terms of how we developed that. Using the technology and the license plate camera enforcement, which we're getting ready to roll out. Waukesha County is watching, the other counties in the state are watching, and I think that risk that this county was sort of willing to take on eliminating cash in the parks and really kind of, putting it forward and not spending the staff time in the parks is appreciated by us as we certainly are still waiting the final results of, how this will play out. But the initial feedback we're getting is good, and if you hear any, I would encourage you to reach out to me or Josh and put them in contact with us. So, thank you.
Joe?
Yes, I have one question. It's come up over my telephone many times from people. It's nice to see it's $50,000 for getting the annual stickers, okay? 48,000 there, whatever.
Yep.
But what is the administrative cost of doing that, is what they're asking? And how much is the cost of those buildings, the camera system, the upkeep of it? What is it all expected to be? That's what they're coming up with here.
And I can get you a specific answer to that. We had, I believe it was 50,000 authorized for the purchase of the cameras and the signage and the buildings that we would need to put into place up front. We are paying annual or monthly cell phone bills, and we are depreciating the cameras over a 7-year period. They were roughly, $10,000 each. So there's those costs which we're counting. We have hired one seasonal person in the office for $10 an hour for the duration of the summer, who is doing a lot of the entry for things mailed in, selling them, counting them, and will be working through enforcement. And we have one staff person specifically, in addition to myself and others, but who have spent a significant amount of time getting this up and running, probably, a full-time job for 6 months. So that would be probably the costs initially. We're hoping that going forward, we will have minimized those costs. But we will, certainly during the upcoming budget, you will see that broken out specifically.
So at this time here, you're more or less saying 50% of the costs so far are being covered underneath the annual and daily stickers. When you figure in the wages, 50,000 for the house and the cameras,
Yeah.
that type of thing.
Yeah, so if you sink those initial costs, we're probably even. The ongoing costs, as is the goal of the entire fiscal sustainability plan, is to cover 100% of the costs of the park operations. So,
Sure, over time,
yeah.
with taking it off each year like that, it'll come out, but in the very beginning, that's what they're all worried about. We're spending a lot more money on implementation and the ongoing expense than what we're actually going to be taking in.
Yeah, and I would argue that will be false. If we hit the $100,000 target, $90,000 this year, which is where I think I'm ballparking the first year to come in at, we will certainly cover all of the costs that we're spending on an annual basis, quadrupled.
Okay, thank you.
John?
Jamie, can you talk about some of the buy-in from other companies, like for the event that's coming up on Friday? Can you talk about some of the contributions that have been made and some of the support that you've been getting that was kind of unexpected? And
Yeah, it was very unexpected. So surprisingly, the Village of Germantown is very supportive of the dog park. They've wanted one for a long time, and they didn't really have a spot for it. So their organization has been supportive of it, as well as we have lots of pet treat people that are coming forward. There's a lot of dog support in that area. I think we've gotten people willing to contribute to the event in the form of food, coloring book pages. The pubs in downtown Germantown are hosting an after party following the beer garden. So they're actually partnering with Raised Grain Brewery to make sure that they're going forward, have Raised Grain brews on tap in their pub. So it surprisingly has been well received in that area.
Brian?
Thank you. Could you get a copy of this presentation emailed to the supervisors for us to share with others? And then also in future sustainability plan updates, if you could kind of reference it more with the startup costs, and so we can see a modified, income versus expense report to kind of compare that to get a real better grasp of what the income is. That would be appreciated.
Will do, and I was actually working today on that graph that shows the expenses by park along with the revenues by park as we go into sort of our plans and where the amenities are. So we have that and we can share that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, see no questions? Dennis?
Quick question, going back to the priorities of the parks, I've noticed that Spaeth Park, and which is a kind of a thorn in my side, has been well documented, that is listed as a special use park. Exactly what special use does that actually get used for?
So when we developed the plan originally, the term special use, if you wanna kind of, we've talked about changing the labels in the new version to primary and secondary. So it wasn't quite the non-priority, we're gonna sell it, as the bottom tier got. So, and when we say that, it meant it was probably slightly more complicated than that. So Spaeth Park is one where we certainly, it's a very recent acquisition of the county board, and it's adjacent to the Washington County Fairgrounds. And so it has some potential there that we will be talking about with the committee in terms of what their next recommendations are. But it was certainly something at the time from the public that we were not prepared to call it not a priority.
Well, except for the fact that I remember going back on it for the people who weren't there, you got a certain amount of stickers that you put on boards to say which parks you thought were really hot, really interesting, and some that you didn't care that much about. But it just seems to me that Spaeth Park did not do all that well, actually, and the tiers were kind of laid out where it just ended up in the middle, but I think that was kind of a false narrative of where it should have been. I mean, quite honestly, I see very, very, very little use of that park at all. I mean, once in a while, I'll see a car there. I go past it, again, every morning, every evening or afternoon, throughout several times during the day, and the park is hardly anybody ever there. Yet we're mowing it, we're keeping up a shelter and a lavatory and picnic tables and all the rest of that. It just seems like it's a huge waste.
Understood, and certainly something the Public Works Committee hopefully heard his comments today.
Jeff?
Thank you. Is there any change on Lizard Mound Park? Any light at the end of the tunnel?
One of the things that we're gonna be talking about with the Public Works Committee is sort of, the next step phase, and we have not spent much time at the staff level. It wasn't in our plan to, investigate that because it was sort of not the lowest hanging fruit. So I think our next steps, at least we'll be talking about this with the committee, would be to actually investigate what the alternatives might be for that park, before we actually ask for any decisions from you, because there's some work that I think we need to do, and we have not spent any time looking into that, or minimal time.
Okay, see no more questions. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to consideration upon request reading of resolutions ordinance, A, 2018 Resolution 13, support for state-funded treatment alternatives and diversion operating while intoxicated TAD OWI program. Mark, with a motion, Jeff, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Or you want to do it by?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Vote electronically, sorry. Mark? Passes unanimously. B, 2018 Resolution 14, support for legislation to staff and fund county prosecutor positions. Tim? And Mike? Any discussion? Seeing none, vote electronically. Okay, ready? Motion passes unanimously. 2018 Resolution 15, support for county biennial budget. Brian, John? Any discussion? Pete? No discussion? Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, vote electronically. Motion passes 24 to 1. Next is I'm sorry, 23 to 1. Resolution, 2018 Resolution 16, support for legislation to create a statewide library system. On your desk, you'll find some literature from Darlene Boson, the County Library Board Chairperson. Hope everyone had a chance to take a look at that. We'll have a motion from Mark. Do I hear a second? Chris? Any discussion? Chris Bossert, sorry. Discussion, Marcy.
Not real familiar with this, so how would this affect the smaller areas, rural areas and their libraries? Because in the literature that was presented here, it had mentioned something about closing some facilities. Have they discussed that at all?
Sure, I can try to. So the sentiment that was explained at the committee level was really making the system more efficient through a statewide system. Right now, it's a regionalized system. There was no discussion about closures. There was no discussion about specific libraries. It was more about efficiencies, where currently towns, villages that don't have libraries are paying a fee on their tax bill. Most people don't even know this, subsidizing those libraries primarily because we're getting billed by other libraries from other counties. And the intent is to eliminate that and that would be part of the efficiency. So it wouldn't be the intent, I don't believe, to necessarily close libraries. That would be the state's decision if they chose to do that, but more focused on creating, streamlining, and making it more efficient.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. So my background is I've been serving on the West Bend Library Board for 8-9 years and as president for 3 to 4 years. I respect our library directors and I respect Amy, my own, as well. But one of our biggest obstacles is materials. It just is. It's one of our biggest costs. It's what we're trying to get more and more money for every year. So I absolutely support passing this resolution, just to have more collaborative effort in sharing those materials, eliminating those duplicate services, and saving money when ordering for higher volumes. It just makes sense to me. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, vote electronically. Motion passes 23 to 1. Moving on to 2018 Resolution 17, support for legislation to lift state imposed restrictions on county property tax levy limits. Do I have a motion to accept? Marilyn? John, second. Mark?
So I'm completely against this, and I think there's some factual kind of feel-good things that were put in the resolution that I don't think are true. Line 27, 28 talks about time-consuming and costly to have a referendum. I really question what the real cost is to add a referendum item if you know ahead of time. And as far as time consuming, I don't think it's time consuming. You have staff that's overhead and you have staff that if they want to present the case for the particular county, they can do that. I don't see where it's an extra cost. I believe it's uncomfortable. I believe people don't feel good about it, asking to put more debt on, and I think they'd be embarrassed. We got a really nice green book here. I had been asking about how much everybody has in debt. Well, you can read it and you can see who has debt and you can see who's been sustainable, which counties have lived within their means. And I think that's the bogus line on line 20 as well. I think line 20, if you read it, it's bogus. What it means is, like our county, if you want to live within your means and you can prioritize where you're going to spend your money and have the services that both the supervisors and the people want, then you prioritize it, and then you live within that. To take on debt, or in this case, to just increase taxes, it's the easy way out. And that's what this state and our state to the south did for many, many, many years in particular areas where they just raised the taxes or they raised their debt level. Those are the two sides of it. So I'm completely against this, and I think it's an embarrassment for anybody that votes for it. And I don't think it should be passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was hoping that this would die in want of a second. Based on what Supervisor McCune was talking, I was at the Urban Policy Forum through the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. They were also, I can't believe how many mayors are liberal when you go to that thing. And it was interesting. The point that they were bringing up, and I don't necessarily disagree with this, is that the basic of the problem that they're claiming, and there is some credence to it, is that property tax is not necessarily something that you want to base everything on, and they were talking about going to a sales tax. I don't necessarily disagree with that, except I want to eliminate the property tax. I don't believe you should add another tax and labor that you switch over. If you've got a fundamental problem with property tax, then get rid of property taxes and put it on more of a VAT type of system. Obviously, that's a huge overhaul. Given the current system that we have, this really is the only way that you're going to be able to, if you will, using a strong word, force municipal and county governments to live within their means rather than just give them the ability to go on the up elevator. And I think that, interestingly enough, with the move that we've made now as a county, because we can have more people running because we have the evenings in that, I think you're going to see this board have more people that are interested in making sure that a majority of what they make remains in their pockets rather than government sticking their hand in it and pulling it out willy-nilly. It's important from my perspective to make sure that we have enough money to have government function properly. Tax is not a four-letter word. I don't know if it should be, but it isn't. I mean, we need taxes, and I think that's important. But I also believe that if we have a fiscal restraint, if you will, to hold back that natural want to try and solve every problem with tax dollars, why do we want to get rid of it? It's in place. It's actually working. We're starting to control the taxes that are collected, and I think we just have to be more creative, and especially with what we're doing in this county in moving forward with priority-based budgeting. If more counties would do that and municipalities, I think that we would be in a better position rather than saying, gee, where else can we tax you? So I am not in favor of moving forward with this. I would certainly hope that we keep those constraints in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Okay, I'm also going to be a no vote on this. We just heard from Supervisor Mahalik, and we heard last month from our county administrator, Josh Shulman, about Mayor Tom Barrett claiming that levy limits are going to diminish his ability to provide basic services. So after learning that, I was appalled to find out that he's already planning 3 expansions of his trolley program, a program that I think is going to be a boondoggle. But even if it's not, even if it's going to work, and we don't know yet, he doesn't have it operating yet, but he's already planning 3 expansions. One would take the trolley up to the new arena, the second would take it down south down to Greenfield Avenue, and the third would go from the new arena up to an area called Brownston, which is right around North Avenue. And he's going to pay for this by some federal funding, but also through the creation of more TIF districts. And what that means is he's going to be giving up taxes he receives now to fund the services that he says he can't fund, so that he can fund these trolley expansions. So philosophically, that's a concern. It clearly says he has no understanding of fiscal responsibility, fiscal restraint, and instead all he wants to do is spend money. And I can't, I can't vote for something that would support giving Mayor Barrett free rein to go on a spending spree. Now, if we were proposing something that for counties that had been responsible and hit certain benchmarks would give them some more flexibility with how much they chose to reduce taxes, I could maybe support that. That's not what's being proposed here, though, so I'm going to be a no vote.
Thank you. Marilyn?
I'd just like to comment that the purpose of the resolution is to lift the levy limits because it's important that decisions are made best at the local level. Counties do not need the state imposing levy limits on them since they have budgeted we have budgeted conservatively. We know what's needed and what is required at our level. So let the local decision makers make those decisions. There's no need for the state to tell us how to manage the needs of our community, and it's incumbent upon each county to determine what their levy should be and not use the state mandate as a so-called excuse that we can't raise taxes, which is true, but we aren't even trying to do anything about it. So I urge you to support this resolution and request WCA to help us make our own budgetary decisions at the local level. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. Marcy?
Thank you. Along with some of the things that have already been said, I think keeping the levy limits in place, not all counties are as responsible as Washington County has been. And those limits are there to help protect the taxpayers of those counties. Resolutions to raise your levy limits have worked when they are necessary, and it also makes the governing body that is asking for that increase responsible to their taxpayers to prove the necessity of that increase. And I think the town of Polk is a good example of that. When they needed more money for their roads, they used sewer PAC to prove the necessity for those monies, and their taxpayers agreed. That shows that the system that we have right now works, and I think we need to leave it there.
Thanks. Dennis?
I can understand local control, and it makes sense. I would also be a no on this resolution. When you look at Washington County, we have been extremely responsible with our money. We've been very conservative in how we spend. We're looking for innovative and new ideas. We are pushing the forefront of showing other counties how it's done. In contrast, you look at the city of Milwaukee alone under Tom Barrett. In the last, I believe, 8 years, he's managed to rack up $1.87 billion in debt, which mostly goes to interest service on the debt. So he continues to pile up the money at an unbelievable rate. The opportunity we have in Washington County is to show the rest of the people that we can live within our means. And while I do agree, sometimes it gets to be very difficult because we have been very responsible and we got to be the parents of the state in doing the right things at the right time. I believe that is our role. I believe that's something we should do. And hopefully other people from other jurisdictions will see that, hey, if you can do that in Washington County, why can't they do that in Rock County or Milwaukee County? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to be a no vote on this also. Having the levy limits helps you take a look at the services you provide and the level of services that you are providing them at. City of Milwaukee, talked about it last month. They're under the impression they just need more money to continue doing exactly what they're doing. Well, you need to take a step back, take a look at what you're doing, what the state mandates, and what is necessary and how necessary it is to perform those. So I think this really helps keep those taxes low, helps us reassess and reinvent, and that's what we're doing here. Buzz?
I have to wonder, being a relatively new member here, what the heck we're doing in Washington County that has anything to do with the city of Milwaukee. The whole idea of being an elected representative at the local level is to do what's best for the people who we represent. It has nothing to do with levy limits whatsoever. If we're going to do what we think is best for the people that we represent, then we should vote the way we feel that we should vote on every issue that comes up to having to do with spending. And, you know, having levy limits is nothing but an excuse. If we believe that we should keep taxes down, then we should keep taxes down by doing the various things that the county has been imaginatively doing over the last few years. But my feeling from a philosophical standpoint is that local democracy is the most honest democracy. It's much easier to vote me out of office, or any of us out of office here, than it is to vote out a state representative, a state senator, or certainly some kind of a federal elected representative. So if the people don't like what we're doing, then they can vote us out of office. But, you know, in order to preserve democracy in its purest form, which is what I believe this is right here, I think we ought to be able to do what we want to do, not with any kind of a restriction from the state. What business is it of the state to tell us what we should be doing vis-a-vis our constituents? We should be doing what we want to do. It has nothing to do with levy limits. So I'm with Marilyn. I think we ought to send this in and protest about these levy limits. Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, thank you. Just to make a side note is, when this came in front of executive, it was unanimous no. Everyone voted no, not to support this. However, with the caveat that it came to this board, so everybody in this board could have their say at it. That's why it's here. It did not get passed to executive. It was unanimous no, but we wanted our fellow supervisors to have a chance to talk about it.
Thank you. Joe?
Yes, thank you. I have to agree with Mr. Carr and with Marilyn. Today and that, the only way town government, villages can do anything above the levy limits is by a resolution going out to the people, asking them for money. Okay, that's one way. Or the state says, borrow money. You can borrow as much as you want. But that's not responsible to your people. Okay? If the county board did not have any of its sales tax coming in anymore, where would you be sitting with your levy limits then? Tell me. You weren't going to even share them with the rest of the townships, villages, and cities, as it was asked just last year. Because you said you couldn't. That would put you in the red. You'd have to start borrowing money. Well, that's what the townships, villages, and cities have got to do if they can't raise their levies up enough. The only time that really happens, though, is in recession years. Like we had a few years ago. There was no new buildings going on. So that hurts the smaller communities, because you don't have that much money coming in. But today, there's a lot of building going on, so it's not that big of a priority. Out of my township, we're looking at doing a resolution, going in front of the people, probably in November, and we're gonna be asking them. So, I mean, we put out a lot of publicity already, internally wise, for that, so everybody knows what's going on. We've proven that we need it. So, I mean, that's how we're doing it. We're not borrowing the money, no. Because that's not fiscally responsible. But that's the only alternatives you have, especially when it's in down years, in bad years, is to borrow the darn money. And then you're paying the bankers. So I'm going to be voting yes on this.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, we'll vote electronically. Motion fails, 18-6. Next is 2018 Resolution 18, support for legislation to close property tax loopholes used by national chain stores. Chris, Tim. Tim.
Thank you. Just real quickly on this, I've been a huge thing. This is obviously the dark stores legislation. Again, at the Urban Policy Forum I was at, there were two speakers, Robin Voss and Luther Olson on the Senate side. And Speaker Voss did make an impassioned presentation as regards to why he believes that the dark store legislation is not warranted and that that's how things should be taxed. And I pointed out, I said, you know, it's an interesting thing when you look at the hundreds and hundreds of calls that go on in our Walmart in Hartford every year for police, fire, ambulance, EMS, and the average, you know, in a household that has less than one, who should be paying for it? You know, we've got employers screaming about the fact that they want better employees, you know, they need the education. Who do you think is going to pay for that? And this is where I think the speaker is not being true to the fact if you want to take those individual property taxes and hold them at a reasonable level. If you've got services in a community and you've pared them down, and Hartford is a pretty conservative community and a pretty conservative county, we do a good job shepherding the taxpayers' money. If we take and take a big hit on the commercial side because they're going to get the lawyers from Minnesota coming in here to earn some money and scamper in and try and force the communities to lower these property tax levies. What's going to end up happening is that burden is going to go on to the individual taxpayers, or you're going to have to cut services. And if you're already pretty lean, that can really hurt. And that's where I think that you know, I would literally, if we're going to keep having this, you know, if the Walmarts, the Walgreens, the Menards of the world, and I've already been quoting the paper, you know, they don't want us to shop at Amazon. Well, gol darn, where do you think I'm going to go if the people that are there? I desperately try and support local businesses and that, but if they're going to go and try and then say, well, we can't do the tax thing. Well, interestingly enough, they can't even use the tax deal as much in for Amazon as the big 900-pound gorilla in the room on the internet, because Amazon has a location in the state of Wisconsin, so you have to pay sales tax just like you do with the other folks. I can't see the fact that we're going to allow what I think is a ridiculous rule in getting these commercial properties lowered, where I don't think they're covering their fair share. And of course, the problem now is it's actually going to be, you know, the rumor of going and moving into industrial properties as well. If you want smart young people to come out of the schools, if you want good fire protection, if you want good police protection, and you're going to use it a lot more than the homeowners, then damn it, somebody's got to pay for it. And so I would absolutely 100% ask everybody here to please vote to support this, because we've got to get past a very recalcitrant speaker in order to be able to get this forward. And the only way we're going to do it is by all 72 counties lining up and saying, hey, who's going to pay for this? We've got it set up in what I believe is an equitable situation. We need to get this through the House or the Assembly and the Senate, because I'm sure the governor will sign it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Chris?
Okay, so I want to start off by thanking Supervisor Jenkins. He originally, as a city council alderman, made me aware of this issue. I think a lot of us already know the impact this is having on West Bend. Yeah, it's significant on the West Bend city budget. Meyer came in, and within a week, they were getting their lawyers ready and filing lawsuits to have their taxes lowered. Now, I'm not anti-business. I would never support punishing businesses by unfairly taxing them. But this dark store loophole shifts their taxes, not just to homeowners, but to all the small businesses in our community. Every single business that does commercial rentals or residential rentals, they have to pay more in taxes. They pass that on to all their tenants. And those are people who can't necessarily line up big expensive lawyers to find the apartment building down the street or the house down the street or the industrial building down the street that's vacant that they can use to get their taxes lowered. Unless they're a big industrial powerhouse, then maybe they can. And that would be the fear, is that this would translate not just out of retail, but then into industrial. So I hope everybody's going to support this and that we can affect this change with the state legislature and get state legislators who right now are no votes to maybe change to a yes by seeing that all the counties are being negatively impacted by this. Thank you.
Thanks. Chris?
I'll return the thanks, Chris. So thank you for bringing this at the county level. I just wanted to have it be on record. I am just so disappointed in our legislature's failure to fix this for what seemed like petty political reasons because they didn't want to work across party lines. That is despicable. We need to pass this and get something done. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Well, by the same token, I think we should thank those legislators that are working on this. I know Dewey Strobel, state senator, is working very hard on this. Assemblyman Robert Brooks and Rick Gundrum are working hard on this. I'm sure there's a host of others whose names I don't know or are forgetting. So I think we want to thank them for working so hard to try to get this done last assembly term, and hopefully this assembly term accomplishing that goal.
Thank you. Okay. See no further comment. We will vote by electronically. Passes 23-1. 2018 Resolution 19, authorization for the conveyance of land to the West Bend Little League Incorporated. Is your motion, Mike? Your second, Chris? Dice? Any discussion? Marcy?
I hope you don't take this as being petty, but when we're starting to finally charge the soccer clubs for using our parks, and we haven't charged the Little League for using this, and we're going to convey it without any cost to them, it seems a little unfair.
Okay, do you want to speak to that, Josh?
Sure. So this same discussion came up at the Human Services Committee and was talked through. And the circumstances, and even today, was talked at length about how it's really a case-by-case situation. And the case with the West Bend Little League is that they've been utilizing these fields for the better part of a half century. Really, we've ceded a lot of that property over there with approvals over the course of that time. So the circumstances are different in the two cases, but that was discussed at length at committee level, and I'm sure all the supervisors on that committee are here if they wish to address that.
Okay. Marilyn?
Yeah, I can't support this either. I've had too much experience with people using land and all of a sudden other people say, oh, well, let's go give it to them. I've witnessed it through the Germantown School District, I've witnessed it in other regards, and I know what effect it has. The farm was there, and Samaritan trustees discussed that many times over the past about the Little League being down there. They felt the residents could watch them, they saw it was an asset, but they did not ever want that land to be given away or given to the Little League, because of the fact that maybe someday, we don't know what it is, but maybe someday we'll have need for that land. So what are they paying? Zero. What's the Little League transfer awarded to? A nonprofit? I guess they'd be titled West Bend Little League Incorporated. I really don't know. Soccer teams, like was mentioned, use other lands in the county, other parks. There's a lot of land used by soccer clubs. In the future, 20 years down the line, well, you want to give that land away too? As we're doing with parks and giving parks away? Why not give it to the soccer clubs? That's about how it's going. I have great concern about it. I've had experience with it. It's through the wisdom that I have, I cannot support it.
Thank you, Marilyn. John?
I just wanted to speak to Supervisor Bishop's comment in that it's officially at the county grounds and not really a county park, so that's why we're not doing a park sticker conversation on that, so just thought I'd address that. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Robert? Bertram, Mr. Bertram? Sorry.
Yes, actually, I obviously sit on this committee, and I brought up a couple of items when we went through this, as far as are we setting a precedent and this and that type of thing. But the more I looked at it, the more it just made more sense, just because we allowed these people to put all this money into those parks. They did all the fields. They did whatever they needed to do. I mean, if you go down and take a look at it, or even look at an aerial view, I mean, you can't tell me that that isn't a beautiful spot down there. I thought about the idea that maybe the Samaritan would need that property at some time or another. I actually thought about that also, but, you know, to me, the way it weighed is if we thought we were going to use that park, we shouldn't let them put anything on it. We should have just been cutting grass all these years and you know, let it wide open. Now to say to them, well, we might need it or whatever after they've put all this money into it and stuff. You know, I just, like I say, I thought about this a lot. You can ask my wife because I talked to her about it a couple of times and she says, for kids. I said, well, you know what? There's all kinds of things for kids. I mean, as I said in the meeting, first time I played baseball, I got a T-shirt, and every team had one bat and a ball, and you went and played baseball. It's just not like that anymore. So they put a lot of money into this, a lot of time. So I definitely voted for it, and I think it should be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Okay, I'm going to start out by thanking Supervisor Bertram, Supervisor Carr, Supervisor Dice for supporting this in committee. I believe this is the right thing to do. When you look at West Bend Little League, they've invested a ton of money into land that wasn't theirs over the past several decades. And they've built that up into an amazing baseball park that otherwise would just be a grassy field that wouldn't be getting used. It's not like the soccer league using a soccer field that we've put in and we've paid for. The Little League paid for this. You know, every dollar they make at the concession stand, every dollar they charge to be part of that Little League, that goes back into the Little League. Some for the players for uniforms and some for those facilities, for building them up and upkeeping them. They've upkept this for several decades. So I'm a big supporter of this. I think this should happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To me, the big difference is the soccer fields, we're mowing, we're doing the upkeep, and as others have said, this was all done by the Little League. So I'll be voting for it. With one proviso, is this a nonprofit or do we get tax money off this?
They're a nonprofit. They're a 501c3, right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Merrill?
Yeah, I'd just like to respond to a couple of comments that were made. We might need it. Yeah, we have always talked about we might need it. And be wise about that because land is of a premium in a lot of areas. Invested a great deal of money. If they've put money into it, they've gotten money out of it. All it cost them was nothing to play on the fields. So what investment have they had outside of their own just to use the facility? And our soccer fields all cut and All expenses paid for by Washington County? Or do the soccer clubs take care of those fields?
This is the first year where either they're paying 100% of the costs or they're opting to do additional mowing and maintenance themselves.
Because that's been my experience where the soccer fields are, that they do the maintenance on it as well. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, vote electronically. Motion passes 22-2. Okay, moving on to 2018 Resolution 20, reauthorization of self-insurance for workers' compensation liabilities. I hear a motion. Motion Dennis, second Buzz. Frank, sorry. Okay, any discussion? Do we need an explanation, or, okay. Okay, Robert.
Richard?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Just kind of a yes or no answer. We've had this before. I mean, we've been self-insured as far as workers' comp previous to this, correct? This is just renewing what we've been doing?
It's a required approval on a regular basis. You have to approve this. So yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. See no further discussion, I'll vote electronically. Motion passes unanimously. Number I would be 2018 Resolution 21, a tax deed sale to Darren Shire. Tim, motion. Marilyn, second. Tim?
Just as a quick note on this, we're just taking a piece of property which couldn't be built on anyway. It's going to be added back into the tax rolls. We got over twice what our minimum bid was, which was a very small amount, but we got twice a small amount. And we've been trying to get rid of this for some time, and we finally did it, so I would ask just for a unanimous vote on this. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, I'll vote electronically. Dennis? You're abstaining? Are you voting? There you are. Motion passes unanimously. Last item would be 2018 Ordinance 1, per diem compensation. A motion, Mike? Second, Chris.
Parsons?
Mike Parsons and Chris Vossert, sorry. Okay, any discussion on this, Chris Dice?
At the executive committee meeting, I voted against the proposed ordinance, not because I was unwilling to save the county some money, but because I did not feel it was fair to all supervisors. Of the 26 supervisors, 14 have been assigned to 2 additional committees, some of which do not even meet on a monthly basis. 6 have been assigned to 1 committee, and the remaining 6 supervisors are assigned to 3, 4, 5, or more committees. This is understandable, as some supervisors have more flexibility with their time than others, as they may be retired or are self-employed, or their jobs just give them that flexibility. But they are giving more of their personal time so these assignments can be filled, and their time has value. Last year, from April 2017 through April 2018, 13 supervisors had more than 30 meetings. That's half the board. We value our staff. We value the elected officials, the sheriff, the county clerk, and the other constitutional officers who serve Washington County. Certainly, our constituents value us and the time that we give. but I do believe that this ordinance could use some modification. And I feel that the current per diem for meetings attended over 30 is cumbersome and time-consuming for staff to track and calculate. Therefore, I would move to amend the proposed ordinance to reinstate all the stricken language in sub C, except lines 25 through 40 on page 1, which will be replaced with the following. County Board supervisors, other than the County Board chairperson, shall be paid pursuant to Section 5910, sub 1, sub C with stats, a per diem in the amount of $20 for each meeting attended in excess of 30 meetings. Per diem eligibility will commence on the first day after the day on which the 30th meeting is attended. This amendment still sees a savings for the county. The fiscal note at the foot of the ordinance would then show a per diem savings of $10,400 over a 12-month period, and recognizes that there is value to those who are able to give more of their personal time to the county.
Could you have the amendment? Okay, no. Okay, do you have a copy of it? Okay, we have a copy of the amendment. So as to the amendment, Pete, are you speaking to the amendment? Jeff, are you speaking to the amendment?
I would second
Okay, well, I'm just, okay. Okay, I'll look for a second then. Second, Jeff. Okay. Any further discussion on the amendment? Anybody? You want, can you read it back, Red?
You want
You have
the wording?
You have it, Supervisor Dice, you can
Right.
read it.
County Board supervisors, other than the County Board chairperson, shall be paid pursuant to Section 5910, sub 1, sub C with stats, a per diem in the amount of $20 for each meeting attended in excess of 30 meetings. Per diem eligibility will commence on the first day after the day on which the 30th meeting is attended.
Any other questions? Pete? Sorry.
Thank you, Chris, for stealing my thunder, but that's okay. For some of you new people who've been here, my heart goes out to you because you're not going to make it in $550 a month, okay? You got to do your job, and you have to, I've been through that session many times, and now I'm busier than I was before. But the people that have the time to pick up the slack, you know, give them a break. Let them do that. I agree with what Chris is saying, but if you have the time to help, we still have a lot of meetings and things that have to be done, and you have your jobs, I understand that, but the people who can do that, let them do it, you know, and I agree with what Chris is saying, but we've been doing this a long time, and people have jobs and they have commitments and stuff, that is all understandable, but the guys who can pick it up, let them do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn?
Yeah, first I wanted a clarification on what she read. What about the rest of the stricken items are all eliminated?
No, everything is put back in except for lines 25 to 40.
Including the county board chair?
Yeah, the county board chair does not get any per diem.
No, you get a salary.
Right.
But the salary was reduced in the,
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, still
So-
remains reduced.
That doesn't change.
Doesn't change.
That was reduced prior to this. It was reduced when Josh became administrator and we felt the county chair had less time to put in. Executive committee was part of that decision process, and I'm sure it came through the county board as
Right.
well.
Did.
so
that was
what is this
previously.
current salary of the county board chair?
No, it's listed there.
21?
21,000 something.
Yeah, 21 something.
That's not what's here.
It's really not germane.
Yeah.
It's not germane to this resolution.
Well, it
though.
is because it's part of it, the 2985
But it
is-
isn't. I mean, it's not. It just happens to be in the language. It's not germane to the amendment. It's not germane to the purpose of the resolution.
Not germane to the amendment? Correct, but a clarification.
Was it clarified?
I'd like to speak on the main motion.
Okay. Jeff?
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Chris, for putting that together. There was another thing, when we get into the days, like we go to the Wisconsin Counties Association, understand it's in there too, $20. You don't get paid, $60 for the whole day. I'm on a lot of these committees, and many of them I ask for. I'm sure my constituents want me to be involved, and I want to be involved, but I agree, it's a matter of value, time. Time is valuable to all of us. Some of us only have so much left. But I'll be supporting this, the amendment. I think it's a good idea. It simplifies things. The other thing was Linda has this old computer program that's running on one leg. And we had talked where doing something like this simplifies it. She can do an easy spreadsheet. It takes less of her time, less of everybody's time to support it. We'll get a little something for going to extra meetings, and we save the county a bunch of money. Thank you.
Chris Bossert?
Okay, obviously Supervisor Dice and Supervisor Schleif, sorry, brain farted your name, sorry, Schleif. Obviously, they're going to support the resolution if the amendment passes. Supervisor Sorcy, you also spoke in favor of those comments. If this amendment passes, would you be voting for the resolution then? So if we amend the resolution this way so that it's $20, you would support that?
I just want to, the guys that are doing the extra should get the extra, and not that, wiping it out and you're just getting your whatever. It's not right, so
Okay.
I would support that.
But, so if we amend this way, where it's a flat $20, you would support the amendment and the resolution? Okay.
It's an ordinance.
Or ordinance, yeah, sorry. I'm going to be in favor then of the amendment. I look back at recently, within the last year or two, attempts to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And those attempts failed because too many people in our federal Congress wanted everything to be the way they wanted and not give a little bit to get 80% progress on what they wanted. So this, in my eyes, is 80% progress. This is a lot of progress on this issue. I'm fulfilling a promise to my constituents by bringing it up. If I'm able to get 80% of what I wanted, I'm happy with that. In general, I see our jobs as salaried, and I can recall working 80 hours a week for a couple weeks in a row because the business needed it and not getting paid a penny extra, and that's kind of what goes along with salaried. And then we talk about the time that Linda invests. This is going to reduce that, this amendment. So I'm going to support the amendment as a compromise, because I think we're always better getting 80% of what we want than getting nothing because we can't compromise. And I thank Supervisor Dice for bringing up this compromise.
Thank you. Chris Jenkins?
Well, I was just going to state that Chris Bossert, I support your original amendment. I did not get into this for money. I got into this to do a job. When I think of the Common Council in West Bend, some of us, do very little, and some of us are more active than others. Passing something like this is really just about an act of good faith on the part of our constituents. I guess if we need to do that compromise, I'm okay with that too, but your original motion was great as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Dennis?
Chris Dice, thank you for bringing up the amendment. I think it is a good amendment. Quite honestly, I'm one of the people that benefits from only having one committee. Probably shouldn't have just said that out loud. But I do work. And I understand, some people do have more time. We have, like she said, retirees or business people. So I don't really want to see somebody get slighted or taken away from necessarily when they are carrying more load than I am. I can agree with that. My whole problem with the per diem system from the beginning has mostly been about the office work and the record keeping, because it just seems like there's a lot of hidden costs there, and that's where it gets to be a problem. So by streamlining this, I would believe that that should address most of my concerns with this. So I will be in favor of this, and I think it is a good compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcy?
I can see where something had to change. Looking at the old system, it was very cumbersome. But I do believe that supervisors, none of us took this job for the money. We don't go on our county boards, town boards, or any of that for the money. We're doing it to serve. But there is an appreciation that you receive by getting those funds, by getting the extra money for the extra meetings. It's a way for the county to say, thank you for giving the extra time. I worked in a job for over 30 years where sometimes it was just a gift card to Shopko after working 56 hours in a 3-day weekend. So that meant a lot. It helped get you through that tiredness. Just that little bit of appreciation goes a long ways. And I think that the amendment should be passed.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, we'll take a vote on the amendment. We ready for that? Do that electronically. Motion passes 23-1. Okay. Chris Dice, did I forget to call you in? I see your, no? Okay, well, all right, sorry. Okay, now, okay. Need a motion to pass the ordinance as amended. No, we don't need to?
We have the original.
Yeah, as amended, okay. Yeah, according to our constitutional officer, we need that. So we need a motion to accept as amended. Pete, and seconded by Buzz. Frank?
I have a comment.
Yes, yeah. Before the vote is taken, yeah, now we're open for discussion. Go ahead, Marlon.
Okay, I mean, I wanted to say originally that the per diems serve as a fair way to compensate board supervisors who put in more time, because some have asked for less assignments, and it is not fair to those who put in the extra time not to get compensated for it. But all in all, as I read everything, and what I've learned about elections, is that salaries are set prior to the parties taking office. So I don't see how this can be acted on within this term, because it says the ordinance shall become effective upon passage as provided by law. No, it cannot be within the term that we are serving. It would have to be the next term.
Increases to board salary are prohibited in the current term. Decreases are not.
In the term?
Okay, any further discussion on the matter? Okay, we'll vote on the ordinance as amended electronically, please. Motion passes 21-3. Okay, next meeting date is Wednesday, July 11th, 2018, 6:00 PM. Motion to adjourn. Brian and John, we are adjourned. Thank you.